Hello everyone, welcome to, this is our third webinar I think today to help us come up with some standard operating procedures for the Tourism Business Council. We are getting the attendees in thick and fast, so I'm just going to give it a couple of seconds so that we can get lots of people in the room before we get kick-starting. 102, 106, and it's going up and up and up. So for those of you who've never been on a Zoom webinar before, it's very easy for you to engage with us. I would ask you to please either send us a Q&A. So on the Q&A, if you can just put your questions in there and that will come through to us. Or you're welcome to chat to us. So at the bottom of your screen, you will see a little chat bubble. And why don't we get kick-started with a little message on where it is that you're actually dialing in from today. So I am calling in from Malmesbury in the Western Cape, which is a little bit dry at the moment. So let's see where you're all from. Just send us through a little chat message on where you're from. We've got a Neisner. Welcome, Bradley. Thank you for dialing in. Great, and that's all coming in. So we have Mandisa, who's going to be our moderator today. But before we get kick-started, I'd just like to hand over to David Frost, who's joining us for a short introduction. David, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thanks, Natalia. Good afternoon to everybody who's joined us. I'm David Frost here of SATSA. I just want to thank Mandisa, our moderator, and all our panelists for your time this afternoon. This is the third one we've held. We started off with transport. We had over 300 people on that webinar. We then did accommodation earlier today, over 500 people part of that one. And it's just been so really sort of heartening to see the industry leadership shown by people who've got ahead of the curve, who have applied themselves and their businesses, but just the amazing way people are sharing at this time of crisis. And I look forward to a really good webinar from the panelists. But just briefly, we are coordinating this through the Tourism Business Council. We are trying to get ahead of the curve. We are trying to put a proactive set of industry-driven guidelines to government so that they, A, can see that we're ready to open up, and B, that we do it in a way that is industry friendly. We all know that the history in the last 7 years has not been a particularly, let's say, industry input sensitive one from government. We generally get shafted where we wouldn't really like it. We've had the unabridged birth certificates, NPTR. The list is quite long. So this is a chance for us to get ahead of the curve. But it's also just good practice. It's for us to actually get a set of minimum standards that we can all adhere to. And what happened in the other two webinars is that's where the conversation goes. There's a lot of detail, guys. This is a conversation that will progress into the months ahead. But the main thing is between now and Thursday to get a minimum set of standards. And it's useful that we try and coordinate this rather than 50 people going off in 50 different directions. We are also next week through the TBCSA, something that I've set up. We're having a dialogue with our Australian and New Zealand colleagues to try and see if we can coordinate these protocols across at least the Southern Hemisphere, long haul destination perspective. So without further ado, we've asked SATSA board members to chair these sessions. Mandisa Makwangaza has recently joined us as Eastern Cape Chapter Chair. She's the Sales and Marketing honcho at Mantis. And I must just say, in a very short space of time, she's made an incredibly powerful impact on the SATSA board. So Mandisa, I put the webinar into your capable hands. I'm going to clock now and I'll listen. So thanks, guys, for your time, and look forward to your discussion.
Thanks, David. Mandisa, over to you. There is a little bit of background noise, I think, coming from Mandisa's phone, but yeah, just a little bit, so apologies for that. Yeah, it is from Mandisa's phone, but that's okay, we'll get through it, and you can unmute yourself. There we go. I'm going to hand over to you, Mandisa, and let's get going.
Is that a bit more bearable, Natalie?
Oh, that's much better, much better.
Okay,
yeah,
fantastic. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us for this afternoon's webinar. We are focusing on tourism products and attractions And with us this afternoon, I'd just like to introduce the panel. We've got Clinton Lerm, who is the owner of SA Forest Adventures. Hello, Clinton. And we have Dawn Robertson, who is the CEO of Constitution Hill Development Company, as well as Wahida. Hi, hello. And we also have Wahida Parker, who is the CEO of Table Mountain Cableway. So I don't know if, I'm sure a lot of you have been on this morning and this afternoon sessions, and what we really are trying to do, as David says, is put together some ideas as to what is the best way forward for our industries in the different sectors post-COVID-19. And we're going to be focusing on a few topics. And I think off the bat, it would be nice to just have a look at those arrival to departure sort of touch points, as well as all of the interactions and sort of equipment in the different sectors within products and attractions. And Wahida, would you like to start the conversation for us? Hi, Wahida, can you hear me?
Yeah, there we go. Sorry, I needed to unmute myself. Hello, everybody. Okay. And first of all, thank you so much for this opportunity. I have no doubt that around the country and with all the attractions, everybody is grappling with how do we go back to business, given the situation and the challenges that we're facing. So we've basically looked at it from two perspectives. The one is, how do we ensure protection for our employees? Because we're an international attraction, and whenever our borders are going to open, we are going to get international visitors. And the second aspect is, how do we look after our visitors when they are here? Now, the underpinning issue for me is around trust. When you are transporting 65 people up 1,000 and odd meters above sea level onto the top of Table Mountain in a little cable car, people trust that your equipment, that your standards, your operating procedures are so well refined that they're entrusting themselves to us to give them a safe trip. And we're basically applying that same standard around how are we going to engender trust in the eyes of the visitor when they come and visit, to make them feel that they are protected. So, I know there are huge arguments around, should we wear masks, shouldn't we wear masks, do gloves protect, etc. But ultimately, if that simple attribute of wearing a face mask and wearing gloves and sanitizing, which, by the way, I consider an imperative, is what gives people a sense of comfort, then that is what we need to do. So I hope that kickstarts the conversation, Mandiswa.
Absolutely, thank you very much. And I'd like to take it over to Clinton. Clinton, hi, are you on? And I think you need to unmute.
There we go. Hi, everybody. Yes, welcome.
Hi.
And from a sunny day in Amanas, looking forward to chatting to all of you. Yeah, look, for us as an industry, especially the adventure industry, it's all dependent on the type of activities that you on offer. We're quite a large company with multiple sites across the Western Cape and Northern Cape. So we do from quad biking to rafting and ziplining. So for us, it's more of an interaction with not just our agents, but our clients, and giving them some surety, as Wahida has pointed out, that when they will visit us, we will be ready for them. So what we've done as a company is we've initialized on our website. If you go onto our SA Forest Adventures website, you'll automatically get a pop-up with what we are doing to ensure safety post lockdown, with regards to from our aspect with our staffing, to equipment, to the maintenance and cleaning of equipment, the quad bikes. We're also dealing with our company on a much more personalized basis, to the degree where every single booking that will be made will be dealt with as an exclusive booking. So we're fortunate enough that we can do that. So if it's a booking 4 people for quad bike and their ride together, it's a family, that 4 will be going out with only their guide. And obviously the other things apply, such as the safety gear. It's an outdoor adventure business. So what's nice is most of our offices, if the weather allows, will be outside. So therefore, social interaction would be automatically not a problem because we're hosting everybody in an outdoor environment. So really from an adventure perspective, it all depends on what activity. There's no shoe that fits everybody, although there are certain criteria that I think we should all follow.
Yeah, one thing that I really liked from that document of yours, Clinton, was your voucher system that you have. And I mean, in cases where we're going to start testing people and our guests are going to be tested at airports, it could change, you know, if someone is able to honor that booking. So could you just let everybody know what that is?
So what we've done is we're also very strong in the domestic market, which I'm very thankful for, because I think the domestic market will be the first kickoff point. We're issuing anybody who at this stage have made any bookings, issue with vouchers, if not refunds. And then for future as well, say the president decides tonight that he unlocks us in 2 weeks' time, and for some uncertain reason there's a lockdown again, we automatically issue the clients with a voucher, and that's in our booking system as well. So we don't need to go and do what we've done now before pre-lockdown, is refunding millions, but having an agreement, a contractual agreement saying, listen, we will issue you with a voucher valid for 24 months to a year. And also another system we've put in place is we've got, because of our domestic strength, we've put a domestic market a membership program together where anybody who's a member of SA Forest Adventures automatically gets discount and updates. And so we're very much driven towards the domestic market as we see that as the initial kickoff.
Yeah, that's going to be key. And one of the questions that has also come up is how, you know, considering, as Wahida was saying, that trust issue, part of guests trusting us is going to be those fewer numbers perhaps on these experiences, like the cable car going up to Table Mountain, much fewer people. And in that case, what sort of building trust for us is going to be imperative, but also the value that we give our domestic market. And the question was, how do we sustain economically when we have to have fewer people in these experiences? You said you're lucky you're able to have exclusives. So what would you advise? And I'd love to hear also from Wahida Parker, from Dawn. Dawn, with the limitations that might come as to numbers and, you know, driving towards a domestic market, what do you think is a good way forward?
Look, I think before Dawn comes in there, let me just say
I think one of the things that we've done.
Oh no, go ahead.
Okay.
Go for it.
Do you want to go first, Clint?
No, go first. It's fine.
One of the things we found, we've been in some audiences to see what audiences feel and when they will come back. And one of the things that's become very clear, it's like almost 1 in 4 people, they would be comfortable coming back to a place which was a lot open and open spaces. So like your attraction, Clint, and like Table Mountain. But for us that are museums and more enclosed spaces, people are feeling a little bit more insecure because they're going to be in more crowded conditions and stuff like that. But I'd like to pick up on pointers. For me, the thing is about trust. The trust that you've built with your community and trust that you've built with your. So, for example, we were one of the first attractions to cancel a major event. In fact, we canceled first before the other large events were canceled. And both from our partners on those events as well as our audiences who we already were engaging for the last few months, they all felt that we had their best interest in heart when we decided not to go ahead with that event. Because at that stage, nobody else had postponed an event. And I think that's important. So the research that we've been doing now with our audiences as well, say, look, you had our best interest at heart when you postponed certain things and you shut down the facility. So we trust you that you've got our interest in heart, that you will open when you feel it's safe for us to come back, and you'll open with protocols and measures in place that will make it safe for us. So I think that trust thing for me is really, really important. And it also goes to how do you communicate with your audiences? How do you take them on board? How do you share with them what you're doing so that you can build that level of security?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what we've picked up is communication is going to be key. Clinton, you had a thought? Sorry, I cut you off there.
No, I totally agree with what Dawn has said. Actually, that's why I took a step back. But I do think it is all about relationships. So whether you are working with DMCs or whether you're working with the public, your first port of call, if somebody lands on your website or if there's some contractual agreement that you've got with an event, is to ensure that, number one, the virus is addressed. End of story. Otherwise, you might as well close your business.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. That's very helpful. And then also in terms of looking at the different types of attractions that we have, I think you pointed out very, very clearly that there are different realities to all of this. And I think Dawn, I want to come back to you. If in terms of just having a look at the different types, how would you advise the industry in those sectors to start gathering up, specifics around those types of products? So yes, you've got your outdoors, and Clint, you have the adventures, and then there are the museums. There's a lot of things. Do you think it's what would the best way forward be to make sure that all types of products are covered?
Melissa, I think everybody's got to take a good hard look at their attractions and what they are doing. So I think each individual product or attraction needs to do a risk assessment of their particular site, and then develop a mitigation plan around that. But that's, for me, is the first thing. You can't do a one-size-fits-all. We're all very, very different. And in doing that, I think there's got to be a real in-depth review of the policies and procedures that you have in place, and ensuring that, firstly, your team, your staff members are completely on board. And like Wahida says, your first point of call is for the safety of your workers and your team that you have around you, and then obviously for your guests that you're inviting in. So for me, that's the first step. But I really don't think that it's a one-size-fits-all. For us at Constitution Hill, we are 4 museums, which are confined spaces, but we also a space that does big mega events. So, we had this big Human Rights Festival that should have happened that we postponed. We do huge events like the Afro-Punk Global Festival. Those events are not going to come back. We have just been in conversation, for example, with the Luries. The Luries are happening at Constitution Hill this year, and they should have happened in September. But we've just worked with them to move them out to November so that we can make sure that we've got the protocols in place for those very big events. So for us, I think it's particularly challenging because we've got these two things. Major mega events. We also do a lot of conferencing and eventing. And so we've had to put protocols in place in that space as well. And then we've got these museums with small spaces. We're talking about jail cells here. It's very difficult to kind of get the distancing going in spaces like that. So my advice to any product or attraction out there would be to sit down with your team and do a really, really strong risk assessment, and then draw up the mitigation plans, and then move forward with that as to how you come back.
Fantastic. Would anybody else like to weigh in?
Hi, Mandiswa. Wahida again.
Hi, Wahida.
So I think, key to this, and I'm touching on points that both Clinton and Dawn have raised, is currently we're conducting surveys with the domestic market to try and understand people's sentiments and to try and understand what would make them feel safe. So those results are going to be imperative in terms of determining how we're going to move forward. But coming to the point that you raised earlier, so obviously we've got a fixed complement of staff, and we're going to be operating at much lower visitor levels than we previously have. So part of what we need to consider is, are we going to operate 7 days a week? Are we going to operate 5 days a week? Are we going to operate with a single shift? Moving towards what used to be our peak season over December, we've got a situation where we would onboard approximately 120 seasonal staff in order for us to run 3 shifts. Now we're reconsidering that, and we're saying, with our existing staff complement, how do we ensure that we can manage to run 2 shifts with our existing staff complement? Also, on the issue of staff, I don't think it's going to be a question of lockdown is lifted and suddenly your full quota of staff are going to return to work. By no means. We are still going to have to look at ways and means in which to minimize engagement and enforce social distancing. So the first thing is to do screening with your staff. Who are the most vulnerable of your staff members? Who have existing health conditions, who may be living with parents who are aged, who could be at risk, who have small children? I mean, how are we expecting staff to come back to work if there's no place for them to leave their kids? So these are the very real challenges that we're going to be facing when looking at our workforce. So that sort of screening to help us mitigate the risks, to understand that people are still going to be using public transport when coming to work, and how are we going to ensure social distancing in those particular areas. So what we're looking at is really a sort of phased approach to starting up operations. If we've got 3 restaurants, we'll only be opening 1. If we've got 3 retail outlets, we'll only be opening 1 until such a point where business levels demand that we open more of them. The important thing is to remain agile through this process. This is not a question of we're going to have a protocol that's going to be applicable for 6 months or a year. We may very well find, to support Clinton's view, that if the domestic market feels the comfort and feels safe enough to want to travel and explore again, and if our marketing strategies are perfect to suit their economic situation, then we're going to find people coming back maybe far sooner than we may be looking at. So to remain agile and to be willing to adapt to a changing environment is going to be absolutely critical.
Sure. Absolutely.
Can I maybe weigh in on that? I mean, I think we all realize that the domestic market is going to be the place that's going to sort of come to life first of all. And if you ask me to drill down even further, I think it's the VFR market. You know, we've all been isolated. We're going to be looking for things to do with family and with friends to reconnect. And I think our strategies need to really understand that that's going to be our first point of call. I think Clinton underscored that in what he was saying. So I think as we go forward, the international market will be kind of a little bit on the back burner while we start to look at, you know, what are the kinds of things we're doing. Like Clinton, you said you had voucher systems. I know that's working well with a lot of particularly small SMME products up here in Johannesburg, already kind of leveraging that. And it's interesting how they will tell you, you know, we've sold enough vouchers, we're keeping people employed for March. Okay, guys, we've sold enough now, everybody's employed for April. And encouraging their supporters and their audiences to get back to join them. But the point that I wanted to raise here is, and I think it's something that we all have in the challenge with, is how do we still engage these audiences? Because we've closed down nights, we've shut them down. And one of the things we've had to do is to really move into the digital space through the surveys that we're doing with our audiences, to the social media channels that we've been doing. We've been doing little webinars, for example, with our school groups and Google Classroom, just keeping those, keeping your product top of mind, audiences, as you kind of, like Wahida says, you know, feel your way through this. And I really underscore what Wahida says, it's agility that you've got to be in mind. And that's from day one, you know, to things like making sure staff got data so that they could work from home, to bringing in essential staff, in sorting transport arrangements. They wouldn't have to take public transport. You're going to have to just kind of think out of the box, be agile, and put these systems in place as you go forward. And completely agree with Wahida. It's about a gradual opening up of your attraction or your products, you know, as you kind of feel your way through it, opening it up gradually.
Yeah, I really like that thought process, Dawn. And in light of that, you've touched on two very key things. Communication, first of all, that I think we've all realized today that transparent communication is going to be key. But I'd really like us to also focus on a suggested, I know it's hard because it's all different, and a suggested sort of standard operating procedure for once we are kicking off in terms of attractions and activities particularly. Do you have, I mean, I know you've been working on things on in the museums, but can you advise in general for the industry what sort of protocols we should be looking at to standardize what everybody does in all of the provinces?
Okay, I mean, I think the brief that we got from David was, kind of track the visitor's journey. So right from the point of contact, making sure that as far as possible, you start to do all your ticketing online and you digitize all those kinds of systems. I was on a call with my facilities team earlier today to do things like putting up these shields at visitor desk and stuff like that, like they have in the supermarket. Trying to push as many advanced bookings and pre-bookings that are done online, and all, ensuring that you don't actually handle physical money as far as possible, capping the number of visitors that come through. So, and then, going through the different points where you would actually have to engage with people. I mean, one of the big challenges for us, and I think it's going to be for all museums, is the very stringent cleaning protocols we have to put in place. And when you're conserving and you're preserving heritage objects, what you can actually use in terms of cleaning materials and chemicals comes up is a whole nother issue that we hadn't ever thought about before. So it's kind of walking that customer journey, walking to every touch point that they would reach, and then trying to kind of stop at different points along the way, analyze what you need to put in place, both from the perspective of you as the, as the attraction owner, as well as the staff. And I think a lot of them, are the obvious things, putting in place the hand sanitizers. I mean, I had a beef with my procurement team. When we shut down the site, they shut down all the procurement of the extra sanitizing equipment and stuff like that. Like we were going to come back and everything was going to be good and clean and we wouldn't require these things. So I had to get them kick-started again to say, no, this is a way of life now. We're going to have to do these things. And I refuse to open until you've got all those protocols in place that we put there. So and some of it's going to be difficult, talking to tour operators about trying to bring down the numbers of groups, the sizes of the groups that we take tours on. We've invested, when we were still operating before the lockdown, we invested in new tools for the tour guides so that they didn't have to get too close to the tour, that they could actually step back, because we had an issue where we had a busload of Italian tourists just after the first announcement was made, and tour guides kind of flew off the handle because they refused to take their tour. So for me, it's really about walking that journey, walking the customer journey, and at every point along the way, what is it that we as the attraction need to do? What is it that we need to message to the visitor? And how do we get this communication and this messaging right? And it's got to be a multiplicity of ways.
I mean, one thought that comes to mind from our perspective at Matters as an accommodation provider is the relationships and the sort of contracts and trust that we build between accommodation and attractions. Hotels have a lot of control within their environments and the sanitizing and all of those. But now what happens when we take the guest and they're moving on the journey, as you're saying, on the touch point? How does this change, or how should we regulate going forward the agreements between the sectors within tourism? So attractions and accommodation and activities suppliers.
Wahida wants to weigh in on that.
Yes, Wahida. Yes, is this Clinton?
Yes, it is. Sorry, I just wanted to see, I've noticed on the group there's quite a number of activity and adventure providers. And one of the questions that came up was with regards to arrival and trying to make your company as electronic as possible. There's a number of ways when people pre-arrive that the indemnities and things can actually be done electronically. One or two systems publicly available that can look at what we're doing. people are more than welcome to contact me afterwards, but that's one way of making sure that you take one engagement area out of the system. That's one less. The other prior thing is that I think any adventure activity, if they've got the capacity that we have at some of our sites where we've got staff housing, you make the staff aware, and you sit and you discuss like we've done. You've got to be very personal with your staff at this stage. There's no hiding around, behind a rock of what's going on. It's a team effort. Everybody needs to work together as a team. So with our staff housings, for instance, that we've got in Cape Town, Hermanus, and the Knysna area, those staff, when they do come back and when we do open, will be committed not to do anything outside of the staff house, apart from sending one person to go shopping, use our staff transport to get transported around. So we are totally mitigating any impact or anything as such. But at the same instance, when people book online, we're also immediately going to ask them about their own personal health. Because we do not want people who unfortunately arrive with fevers and things to arrive at the site and give us any contamination or issues. But I agree with what I think Barry has mentioned it, a couple of people on the side, that that venture side is actually low risk if it's mitigated and dealt with correctly. And if we just make sure that our systems are in place.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you very much, Clinton. I think, Dawn, you wanted to say something?
No, I was telling you that Wahida was waving a hand in there.
Oh, Wahida. Sorry about that. Wahida?
Yeah, no problem. So I think the issue is what David, the brief we had been given was to look at what are the protocols or the standard operating procedures that we need to look at that we can standardize. So Clinton, you're very blessed, you know, you've got staff housing, you can make transport available. The rest of us are drawing staff from across the Western Cape, from all the different sectors. So it's going to be a major challenge. So part of the protocols would be, you know, hand sanitizer. What we've done is we give each staff member a bottle of hand sanitizer. And we also give them some to take home with them so that they always have hand sanitizer. Using of gloves, obviously in areas where you are going to be touching certain parts of the building or handrails or whatever the case may be. Important for us to apply the social distancing. For us, it's important to apply it in the queue if there is a buildup of the queue, to ensure that we put the markers down where people can see the spacing. The second thing is, well, also in line with that, cleaning of the cable cars when passengers have disembarked and when people need to embark again. So we've looked at, you know, the masks, the gloves, the sanitizing, the social distancing protocol. Also in line with what both Clinton and Dawn have mentioned, we need to take our staff's temperatures, because as soon as we identify, so we're going to have to create an area where we can screen staff before they get onto the premises, take staff temperatures to make sure that nobody's running a fever, and to ensure that we're able to transport them back home in the event where they do show symptoms. So that's just touching on the stuff that we know the World Health Organization is putting in place. In addition to that, our cable cars would not be able to carry 65 passengers and ensure social distancing. So we are going to severely reduce those numbers, which brings us to the issue of, if people do start coming back, can we book them a time slot? Say, we'd like you to come and visit at 10 o'clock. You've got 20 people. We'd like you to bring them up in 2 batches. You know, we've got space where we can hold people, which is down at the neck. We've got a golf cart that could convey between the 2 areas and say, okay, the next lot of people can now come up. you know, so that we minimize the engagement. Ensuring that social distancing is complied with. Now, then you need to bear in mind you've got families traveling together who want to stay together. So, you know, you can't impose social distancing on a group that's but you could do that to a touring group that's made up of disparate individuals. Having said that, they'll all then get back onto the same bus and are together on the same bus going back to the hotel. So the complexities are huge. And I think the point that Dawn made is absolutely critical. And that is, you know, for each of the attractions and for each of the adventure offerings that's out there, you are going to have to tailor make your own protocols to suit your environment. I just saw there was a question, and the question was, Wahida, what about the weather? So obviously in inclement weather, the cable cars don't operate. We have developed and ready to launch a virtual reality product. It's a simulated product where tourists can actually get into the cable car, have the experience with the virtual reality equipment, which we need to ensure is properly sanitized, handled with gloves, etc., etc. And people can get a virtual reality tour in all of that. So, you know, so these are, we designed this product to deal with what happens when the weather is bad and people are so disappointed when they can't go up. But now we can actually use this product further and wider in terms of, and I'm thinking, we've got a program called the Class in the Clouds, where school kids are taken up the mountain. So now, you know, we don't think school kids are going to come up the mountain, and we wouldn't want them to. So what we're going to do is take the program to the schools. So as soon as the schools reopen, we would have the ability to do that. So this is, you know, part of using technology and becoming more innovative around how we can utilize our products and ensure that it stays top of mind.
Thank you so much. Thank you. We have a very interesting question here from Tom Forster, if I may. I'll just read it directly. It says, I believe that most privately managed attractions will ensure that they follow safety protocols. My concern is public attractions, where facilities are already in a poor state, and the excuse has always been that they do not have budget to make even basic improvements. How can such attractions, some of them iconic and most on visitors' itineraries, ever be declared safe?
I guess that's the point where I should come in, because Constitution Hill is a government, albeit a government-private kind of institution. Look, I hear what the individual is saying, and I think a lot of our government institutions are in a poor state. So when I had instituted protocols, I instituted them about 2 to 3 weeks already before lockdown. And I had visitors coming through that had been to other sites where there was absolutely nothing. And a lot of these were private and government-owned sites. So I guess it comes to what you were saying, Mandisa. It's that relationship that the DMCs, the hotel establishments have with the attractions that they're pushing their clients out to. And I think it's going to be really, really important that we, you know, some attraction like Constitution Hill, which has got all the means in place and has done all these things, actually reaches out to those that have not been able to do it. And maybe we need to do something where we actually do, and it's
I think Dawn has just frozen there.
Yeah.
We are having a little bit of not technical, bandwidth issues on this particular webinar that I can see. I don't know if you want to just proceed. Yeah, Dawn's just dropped off. I think she's logging back on again. And then-
Sorry, I got lost for a minute.
no worries, you're back.
Sorry, am I still on the floor?
You are.
Yes, yes, you are, Dawn.
Okay, so what I was suggesting is that, you know, maybe some of the attractions, the government-owned attractions, and I wouldn't mind being part of it, maybe we work with SATSA to run, you know, training programs for these organizations to look what protocols can be put in place, because a lot of them don't require a huge amount of money. I think as a government attraction, you've got access to a bulk buying of all the necessary sanitizers and equipment that you require. It's just about training people and giving them the necessary knowledge and skills to put these interventions in place. But I agree with what people are saying. You know, I wouldn't be comfortable sending out my visitors or my family to a place that I thought wasn't equipped to do that. And it goes right back to that whole notion of communication. How are you communicating with your audiences, with your stakeholders, reassuring them about the things that you're doing and making sure that those protocols are in place?
Yeah, that's very true. Thank you very much for your input, Wahida. One thing that I'd really like us to also have a look at, and someone mentioned it in the questions, is sports. Particularly the question was around golf as a major attraction for tourism to South Africa. And what happens when we start looking at sports as an attraction and as a product that brings a lot of inbound and local tourists to our destinations? Clinton, would you like to weigh in on that one?
Yes, I think, look, once again, there's no shoe that fits all here. So it really depends on which activities. I'm not a massive sports fanatic, but I do admit I do miss my sports Saturdays, whether I'd be watching one rugby game or so. So I think, look, if you look at the sporting options and the sporting codes, I think they need to take those kind of decisions rather than the public, because if it was a public opinion matter, most people would want their sports back on a Saturday. And for large gatherings, that's also kind of predetermined by government at this stage. So sporting codes will need to look at their own set of protocols, how to enable them to make us feel happy to go sit in a stadium before any other step.
Mm-hmm. That's very true. Okay.
Wahida wanted to weigh in, Mandisa. I don't know if you saw.
I can see that. Hi, Wahida.
Hi, Mandisa. So this is not really about sport. I think sport's going to fall under that larger category of events, because you have spectators and then you have players. So, I mean, I just want to come back to the issue of protocols. You know,
Yes.
how do we ensure that an attraction meets standards that is suitable for visitors to come and visit? So, and I would think this is the role that SATSA is going to strongly play in saying, these are the protocols, dear government, that we believe attractions should meet before they can be allowed to operate again. And should that be a certification to say, we've gone through the attraction, we've walked the visitor journey, and we feel that the attraction is complying with all of those requirements in order to ensure visitor safety. So that really is my point. And to that point, should you be affected by one of your visitors actually having COVID-19, the virus, or one of your staff members, you know, what is the protocol for sanitizing the whole place? And when are you then considered to be ready to reopen? So those are two key issues that I think we need to address, because we've seen it happening to retail stores. And, you know, so I'm just curious to say, retail stores also have large footfalls. What are they doing if they are exposed to the risk? How do they ensure that once they've met certain standards, they can start operating again?
Sure, Wahida, but what does that mean? Does that mean you have attractions and these types of products now part of grading councils? Do we have associations doing assessments? How do we roll this out?
So, you know, really, I mean, I think that for the industry to ensure the safety of visitors, so no visitor comes to Cape Town or to South Africa and just goes to one attraction. They've got a whole list of places, and they would want to know that those places, so just like if you've got a food outlet, you want to ensure that the product that you're offering is safe for people to consume. So when you go to New York City, you see all these certificates in these small little shops saying what their grading is or what certification they've got. So, I mean, in my mind, I see this as an opportunity to say that we've gone through the protocol procedure with a institute or a body, and they consider us safe. And this isn't something that you get like a grading council. They come once a year, they grade your hotel, you carry the 4-star or the 5-star rating for a year. This is going to be a continuous monitoring to ensure, because you know what happens with staff? The moment the threat doesn't feel that real anymore, we're going to stop sanitizing, we're going to stop doing the social distancing. So that there is where I believe industry and I believe SATSA should be playing a strong role in determining, you know, whether or not you're meeting those standards to make it safe for visitors to come on board.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Can I just pick up on one of the points that Wahida raised there? And I see Bradley Bowers on the line here from SAT. Where are we in terms of, you know, the TDCSA grading attractions, and should we not be looking at almost an appendix that goes on to the various grading criteria for the different aspects of value chain? Yeah.
Well, I don't for one have a particular answer, but I do agree with what Wahida was saying, that it needs to be something that's continuous and not an assessment that is done and then 3 months later or a year later re-looked at again. And I'd like to go back to what I said earlier, as to maybe it takes us and to regulate each other as the industry. If I know we are sending guests to a particular attraction, perhaps it's that relationship and that contracting, I don't know, that needs to change in such a way that we are keeping each other accountable, or to protect our guests. And I don't know if you might have any thoughts there in terms of how you relate with the other sectors within the industry.
Was that question posed at me or just at anybody? I think it was something that it's something that I raised earlier on. You know, it's really about all your relationships with all your stakeholders. It comes back to that, you know, and if you have a good relationship and there's trust, and, you know, you should be fine. It's where, you know, you don't have the trust of your stakeholders and your audiences that you're going to run into challenges. And I agree with some of the points that people are raising on the thing. You know, we don't want to over-regularize it. We've already got a lot of red tape. So how do we do it in a way that doesn't actually add to the burden of what we've got to endure? And knowing that at the end, if we get this right, we're going to get our audiences back and we can get back to the so-called normal, although I'd like to believe we're never going to get back to the so-called normal when we're actually going to be in a much better space post all of this.
Mandisa, if I can come in there. I think every single company and everybody that's on here should have part of their marketing strategy, the COVID communication. There should be a discussion around that. So if you are doing any marketing, just as much emphasis at this stage, where we are now with where we are with the trends, should be on what you are doing to mitigate the circumstances within your marketing parameters.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Clint, I'll be taking some closing statements. I see that there's a lot of comments up in the questions. So if you do have anything that just one last question you'd like to answer before we close off, then and we wrap up our webinar for this afternoon.
Well, I've had a look at most of it. One of the questions that came in was with regards to public facilities, such as the Cape Nature dunes in Atlantis. If those facilities will be opened up once the ban is lifted. That's something I don't think we as a panel can discuss at this stage. It's more a question of whether the entities are going to do that. But from closing arguments from my side is, I have got that document on our website. It's a document that I can freely distribute to anybody on our SA Forest Adventure website, and anybody is more than welcome to copy, paste, and tag along and see how you want to benefit and how you want to change it, and also come with some recommendations. We've got to pull together, get through this. It's a matter of ensuring that tourism survives, because tourism is the backbone of the country. And at the same instance, we also want to thank SATSA and David and Hanley and Natalie and everybody for what they're doing. I think it's a pivotal time to be part of the SATSA family. There's no better voice than the SATSA voice at this stage.
Thank you, Clinton. Dawn, some closing remarks from you?
For my part in short, yeah. For my part in short, I completely agree with what Clint is saying and what Wade is saying about marketing and COVID-19 messaging being an important part of it. Just don't tell people how to wash their hands. I think it's a bit like, when we had AIDS education, people got tired of things. I think you've got to really look at how you position that argument properly. But for me, I think, you're going to have that 20% of your audience that are simply chomping at the bit to get back to you. Those are your early adopters. They're going to be the ones who come in there first. Then you're going to have your herd mentality, the 60% that will come because they saw that the 20% were there, and then the rest will follow. For me, I think it's very important to engage those early adopters, get them on your side. They're your influencers, work with them, because if they come in and they have amazing experiences and they get the word of mouth out that everything is back and you can do this, that's going to really help to kickstart your business. So if there's one part in short, that's what I would like to say. Really, really focus on your early adopters, your key target audiences that stand by you through thick and thin, and use them. Make them part of your team as part of your comeback strategy.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Wahida? Is Wahida there?
Yeah, hi, thank you. So my parting shot is linked to my opening statement. To build confidence, to build trust is key. Communicating that messaging and ensuring that we comply with the things we say we're going to do. So if we say social distancing is applied at our attraction, make sure you do it. If you say your staff have been trained and they're going to wear masks, make sure that they wear them all the time. So that, to me, is what's going to build trust. I would like to thank SATSA for this opportunity. I think, to echo Clinton's sentiments, we need to get our economy back up to speed. We're taking a beating at every front, and tourism is key to that. So the sooner we can instill confidence into visitors' mind about visiting South Africa, especially when the rand is trading to 25 rand to a pound, we should be the first choice. And I think we can absolutely enjoy the position of being a top tourist attraction for visitors all over the world. And we've had the example of our president setting the tone with lockdown being implemented and with all the strategies. So I am absolutely positive that, yes, it's going to be a slow start, but if we all pull together, we can make this go back to the numbers pre-COVID-19. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Dawn, and thank you for your time. I'm going to hand over to Natalia at this point. Natalia?
And you said thank you for being such an awesome moderator. I guess my job's on the line, so I'll have to just protect that. I would like to just extend again, if you have any inputs that you weren't able to share with us during the session, or you have a bright spark of an idea tomorrow morning in the shower, you can send that through to me, communications@satsa.co.za.